My youngest son asked me a question the other day.
Go on.
He said, Dad, with his little face, where does poo come from? And, you know, I thought, well, he's got to an age where he needs to understand, you know, the realities of life. So I gave him a simple but straightforward answer. His shocked and slightly confused little face kind of took it in for a few minutes. He went, okay, what about Tigger?
Very good, Pete. Well done. Welcome, everybody.
Save the best till last.
So we're doing our podcast as normal, apart from the fact that we're doing it completely live. So welcome everybody who's watching us live on YouTube. But you might be listening to the audio stream or watching after the fact, and in which case it's not live.
Yeah, you're listening to it later.
But hopefully we are still alive.
Well,
anyway,
yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Here's the format for our season finale. So this is the last podcast we're going to do in 2021. We need a bit of a break, and so we thought we'd do the last one live. So the format for the podcast is as per usual. We've got some news, we've got some main stories. We'll tell you what those are in a minute, so that you can get your comments in as well. We've got Rumour Mill.
We have. Oh, actually, on Rumour Mill. We have got a couple of rumours, but we'd like your rumours, and what we'll do is we'll get Tom and Erin, who we'll introduce in a minute, to make a note of those, and at the end we'll assess the rumours that you've heard for sort of validity.
We'll give them our usual traffic light treatment. Okay, so perhaps we can switch to the Erin cam. We've got Erin there. Hello, Erin.
Hello.
And also Tom is there you go. Hello, Tom. Excellent. We wouldn't be able to do it without these guys helping us out. So thanks very much. You're looking very glam there, Erin.
I try. Thank you.
Done something new with your hair?
I cut it.
Did you cut it evenly?
I cut it myself.
That shows. Yeah.
Perhaps you've tried to dye it as well. I don't know. I can just maybe see.
At least I have hair.
Okay. Look,
actually, you are looking a bit.
Follically delengthened.
Yes.
Just be nice, because my wife may well be watching. Actually, I don't know why I'm saying that. She wouldn't be watching this, but it was my wife who cut my hair, and she doesn't remember which combs to use. So I say I want the number 2 comb on the side, and normally I say the number 6 comb for the top. For some reason, the number 4 came out of my mouth. So I'm looking a bit like a convict, and I haven't shaved either, because I thought I might have a winter beard for a little bit, maybe.
Excellent.
Thinking about it.
You should go with a beard. You look very Nordic.
Thank you. Let me tell you what the topics are that we're going to be talking about tonight, so then you can think about maybe comments or questions you might want to put to us. We're going to talk about Apple Silicon in 2022. So we're going to cover off what Macs we're expecting next year, and also we'll have a look at iPads as well.
Yep.
We want to talk about what M2 might look like.
Yep.
And we also want to talk about our experience with Apple Silicon. So that's the original M1 machines, and also the newer laptops that you can see. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see those on the desk in front of us. So if you've got questions around those items, chuck them in, and what we'll do is we'll pause at various points just to take some questions, and Erin will try and pick some out and flag them up on the screen, and we'll try and get to everybody if we can.
And Erin, will you use your usual technical insightfulness to pick out the questions that are most relevant to the audience?
Of course, I'm known for my amazing knowledge on anything tech. So
excellent.
I'm ready.
Thank you. That's brilliant.
Thank you. Good. So we're going to do that. But first of all, Erin, I just wanted to highlight a comment from the most recent video we did. So this was over on our main channel, youtube.com/constantgeekery, and we reviewed the rather nice STM rucksack, backpack, whatever you want to call it. Some of the comments that we got were quite interesting, but I like this one. So I'm just going to read it to you. You haven't seen these yet?
I haven't.
No.
I have not, no.
Okay, this one was from Frank Petrie. He says, the episodes with your daughter are the most informational and entertaining vids on YouTube.
Frank, me and you are going to have some problems.
I've told you before, guys. She's a genetic experiment. Cloning, test
wrong.
tubes. Yeah.
Excellent, priceless. Just seeing Erin's face there.
That was good.
So just in case you wonder why we keep looking down, just in front of the camera here, we got our screen with all of your comments on and other things. It's also incredibly distracting because when you can see yourself, it's kind of hard to make yourself look a few inches higher down the camera lens, but we will try and do that.
But I can see a lot of people are saying hello. So hello to some recognizable names there. And also, sorry you've had a rubbish week so far, the Equalizer. We'll try and cheer things up for you a little bit if we haven't already. So nice to have you all with us.
Yeah, really good. So let's do some news, Pete. You had some news.
Yeah, this is a few days old now, but Huawei, is that how you say it? Huawei?
It's how you say it.
How do you say it?
I would probably say it the same.
Right, okay.
Huawei.
Okay. Yeah. Suffered on their app store, I think it's called the Huawei App Gallery, a large-scale malware campaign affecting over 9 million users. Now, just to be clear, that's quite small fry in the global scheme of things and certainly in the Android ecosystem. But if you're on the Huawei App Gallery, there were lots of apps, masquerade or a Trojan app called the Android Synos 7 Origin Trojan. And what was happening was on over 190 different apps, these apps were purporting to be things like games or simulators or completely normal apps. And when you downloaded them, it was basically monitoring your phone and potentially stealing sensitive information. And what made them even more dangerous is the apps actually performed as advertised. So if you downloaded the game, it worked as a game. So if you enjoyed the game, it was sitting there in the background. People wouldn't necessarily know to uninstall it. So the only real solution is to get some AV installed.
A bit of antivirus.
Not a Trojan one, obviously.
So a couple of points that I picked up from that is, of course, the app would have asked for permissions that are maybe odd for that. You know, if you're installing a game and it's asking you to be able to use your phone and make phone calls and stuff, then that should trigger alarm bells.
Yeah.
I also think it's a great advert, isn't it, for Apple's closed ecosystem and with the app review and everything else that goes on.
Definitely.
So, yeah, interesting news story. I've got one for you, Pete.
Okay.
You've got your phone there.
I have.
And I got my phone here. Different generations of the iPhone Pro Max Pro.
Mine's better than yours.
Yours is better because it's one number more.
It has more number.
Yeah. What do you notice, though, about this phone and indeed every smartphone pretty much that's come before it?
That's a very broad question.
Thinking about the design, is there anything very specific about all of these phones? Any just sort of one thing you can think about the appearance of the phone that is very common?
It's got a touchscreen.
Good. And what shape is the touchscreen?
Well, rectangular.
Rectangular. Now, haven't you always wanted, Pete, to have a phone that isn't rectangular?
It's not a thought that's crossed my mind.
Okay. Well, what about you guys? Have you ever fancied having a phone that's not rectangular? Let's show you. Let me show you.
Do you mean square?
No, I don't mean square.
Right, okay.
Thomas, could you call up the website for circlephone.com? Circle spelled CYRCLE phone.com. And
is this going to appear on the screen in front of me?
It should appear on the screen in front.
Oh, that's not gone well.
It's not gone well, has it? Because it hasn't appeared on our screen.
Everything's locked up.
Everything's locked up. So perhaps we can just go back to camera one. And I'll instead have to describe it because Tom's laptop has indeed
There's a little link
failed.
here. Shall I just click on it? Do you want?
I'd like to get your reaction to this. So imagine, if you will, folks, a phone, and perhaps click on the Find Out More, which will take you straight through to the Kickstarter page, Pete. Perhaps you could describe what you're seeing there.
Well, I don't really know what it is that I'm seeing. It's an oval-shaped phone.
It's an oval shape. It's called Circle Phone, and it is indeed sort of circular, although more oval.
It's an oval.
And there are various lifestyle pictures of people using said circular phone with its circular screen.
I tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of a giant Tamagotchi. That's what it looks like.
It does look like that. Look, we don't normally do the whole kind of disparaging comments about products that people are putting a lot of hard work into, but I just don't get this one. I really don't get it. If they were coming up with a new interface and a new phone operating system that worked with this circular design, I could see that being interesting, but it's not. It's just stock Android.
What? Why? I'm trying to work out what's going to happen when you watch a video on it.
Well, it will just make a square, or you could just watch a little bit of the video, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe Tom, could we maybe just try one more time to put the pictures up on screen with your laptop? Hey,
there
look
we
at that.
go.
That's working now. There you go, folks. You can.
It's a giant Tamagotchi.
It's a giant Tamagotchi. Now, this device, you've got the Kickstarter page up, Pete.
Yeah.
So, what does it cost? See if you can find that. What if you've got a pledge to get one of these? And you'll notice so far it's raised $13,700. So, I think it's not just us that doesn't understand what this is.
You'll get, if you pledge $699 or more, you'll get the Circle phone 4G delivery, and look, you get a notepad and some glasses and a coffee with it.
Delivery September 2022. And as you know, with any Kickstarter or Indiegogo or any of these things, then whatever date it says on there, you can add some considerable time to. I think they're
I don't get it.
Barking up the wrong tree there, possibly. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Anybody out there? I'm interested to know who thinks actually I'd quite like a Circle phone. Erin has put a hand up.
I think it's cute.
Would you really, though? Would you be seen with one of those
I
in
generally
public?
I generally would. I'd like to it's a good conversation starter as well. Like you go to a party, you don't want to talk to people. Circle phone.
I think that's absolutely right. If you go to a party and you don't want to talk to people, you pull out your Circle phone. That will probably do the job.
But you don't really need that. So what's really interesting is if you look through the history, it says in January 2017 there was a Circle phone 2G.
Oh, really?
And it took them till January 2017 to finally locate a round display because they're in such high demand. Anyway, it does look like a Discman. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Crazy.
Looks like a hand warmer. I suspect it will be. Who knows what chip they're going to put in it.
Goodness me.
I just
don't get it.
Well,
I
I suppose there will be some people who will want it, and in which case it's good that there is a market for Circle phones for people like Erin. And this really, folks, is a good indication of what level of trust you should put in Erin's tech observations. Just
rude. So rude.
Okay.
The equalizer says if it's got an Intel chip in it, it probably is a hand warmer. Yes.
It does look like that. Or,
it does.
Yeah, and it does. Just no sense whatsoever. Anyway,
look, let's hit up one of our main topics, shall we? Let's talk about Apple Silicon in 2022 because it's going to be interesting. We know that there are some Macs left.
Well, there has to be. We know that the transition has to be finished by the end of 2022, according to Apple's own schedule. So we know there must be new Macs to come.
Let's just be clear that at WWDC, when they first announced the transition, they said it would be a 2-year transition. And then at the last event, which was later in the year, they said we've got a year to go. So they have
kind of nudged it out.
Yeah, they did.
They?
But what haven't we got yet? We haven't got a Mac Pro running on Apple Silicon. We haven't got a large iMac running on Apple Silicon. And that's it. Have I missed any? Everything else has been done, is running on Apple Silicon. So I think there are lots of rumors going around about what we might see for next year. Mark Gurman from Bloomberg, he's got some ideas, and lots of people are latching onto that because he's a fairly trusted source. I think we want to approach it from a slightly different angle because we don't necessarily follow the rumors particularly. And we like to look at things from a commercial viewpoint. So the question that we ask ourselves is what makes sense for Apple commercially? And that's, I think, is the approach that we're going to take here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So let's go through each of the Macs, and then what we'll do is we'll take some comments for each one. We're going to start with
MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Now, of course, that raises the question, why would you redo two machines that are already selling very well and are already on Apple Silicon, when your goal is to transition all of your computers to Apple Silicon, those have already been done. And yet lots of people are saying we're expecting a new MacBook Air with a new design and an M2 chip. And Mark Gurman is saying new entry-level MacBook Pro.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense to me.
Care to elaborate?
Well, don't you think that the MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro, actually I can just say the MacBook Pro. No, I can't. I have to say the 13-inch MacBook Pro. They are so similar. There is really not a lot to choose between them. And the 13-inch MacBook Pro doesn't really warrant the Pro moniker.
No, it doesn't. What the 13-inch MacBook Pro over the MacBook Air offers basically a touch bar, longer battery life, and supposedly slightly better performance, but that's arguable.
Yeah, because of the thermal dynamics of it. But yeah, we've not really
in
seen much
real
evidence
world.
of that.
You're not really going to see the difference. A slightly brighter screen.
Yeah,
it's 100 nits brighter, I believe.
Yeah, do you know what a nit is, Erin?
Not at all.
No,
not at all.
We've done this, and she started like scratching her hair when we spoke about that last time. Is that why you went and cut it?
You keep coming back to my cut hair.
You set these things up for me.
Mind you, if someone had nits, they might sort of go a bit sharper with their haircut.
Hey, I'm losing a lot of hair here. I've got a lot of slap up front here now, like you, Pete. And what I'm trying to do is blend it a little bit tighter.
Whereas I accentuate mine.
You go more for the I've stuck my fingers in the plug hole again.
Pineapple head look. I love it.
We're getting sidetracked.
Yeah.
Can I throw in a wacky idea? I know this may be a bit of a theme going through.
Go on.
But why do we need a MacBook Air and a 13-inch MacBook Pro? Why do we need them to have those? Why can't we just have a MacBook? We've got the new MacBook Pros. You can have it in 14-inch, which is essentially the same size as the 13-inch.
Yeah.
And you can have it in 16-inch with the Pro chips. So it deserves the Pro moniker.
Agreed.
It's got the extra ports, got the nicer screen, and all of those extra good things. Why do we then need a 13-inch MacBook Pro? That doesn't make any sense because it's never going to be Pro. It competes with the 14-inch, so it doesn't make sense anymore. It never made sense anyway, because why wouldn't you just buy the MacBook Air unless you really want a touch bar?
Yeah.
So why not just have a new laptop with a new design, probably with a notch? Sorry, folks. That is just called MacBook.
I agree with your thinking up to a point. However, I think they will call it a MacBook Air because branding. I think what you're saying is to have a MacBook range and a MacBook Pro range. But I think in fact, as I say it, knowing what they've done with the iPad, I wouldn't be surprised if they do have a MacBook, all new design, and a MacBook Air, which is the more premium one, following the iPad pattern.
Possibly more like the last laptop that they called the MacBook, the 12-inch, super thin and light. Because that was rubbish, but they could make it really good now. With a cut-down M1 chip would fit in a tiny case like that.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Interesting. So that would make more sense to me, because you're right, that the 13-inch MacBook Pro is just an aberration in terms of how it fits into Apple's lineup. I'm not saying it's a bad machine, but
no, not at all.
Why would you have one unless you desperately wanted the touch bar when you can get a perfectly adequate MacBook Air for a lot less money?
Interesting. I think back to when the MacBook Air was originally introduced. Does anyone remember that? Steve Jobs walked out on stage with the paper envelope, and he sort of, would untwirled the string and pulled out this.
Do you remember that?
It was an iconic moment. And I remember how I felt the first time I saw one in the flesh as well. It was a genuinely exciting thing because no one had really done that before. It was completely unique. And this kind of MacBooks that you were buying at the time, I can't remember. I'd have thought the polycarbonate iBooks had gone by then, but so it was just MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I can't remember when the polycarbonate MacBooks ended, but it was around about that time. There might have been a bit of overlap,
possibly.
But yeah, the only thing that sort of dissuades me from that is that the MacBook Air is already at the entry level quite competitively priced for an Apple laptop. So are they really going to come in with a MacBook that will have to be lower than a MacBook Air in terms of price, unless they're trying to saturate more? You know, we talked about this in last week's podcast about looking at other markets where, you know, £999 or dollars for a MacBook Air is still just pie in the sky.
I don't think Apple is looking to go any cheaper.
No.
And if you recall that super thin and light 12-inch MacBook, I'm pretty sure it was more expensive than the MacBook Air, despite offering less performance, because it was sold on the basis of it's super thin and light. I mean, it was very. I almost bought one. Such a nice looking thing, but you just know it was going to be a disaster performance wise. Anyway, there's some thoughts then on MacBook Air. Will we see a new MacBook Air? Will it be called MacBook? Will there be a? What do you think, guys? We've got some comments. Erin, chuck some comments up for us.
Adam Sangers says, still think it's too early for an Air and Entry Pro unless they're planning a radical redesign. Resurrection of a 12-inch MacBook, maybe.
Interesting. Yeah. I can see why. Why push on with the M2, particularly with all the silicon malarkey going on?
We're going to go and talk about that in a minute in a bit more detail. But yeah, I think the expectation of new models at that end of the market, in fact, any new MacBook model in 2022 doesn't actually make sense based on previous history. So it may be that we're going to be seeing more of what we're talking about in a minute.
Can't ignore the rumors, though, can we? That's the thing. And a lot of these guys have been accurate with what they're saying. So a lot of people are saying we will see a new MacBook Air type computer, and a lot of people saying it will have the M2. So, you know, we could be wrong on that. And Apple does its own thing at the end of the day and will push schedules and stuff.
Mark Sequence says, your hair looks great. Love the color. I can only assume you're speaking about me there. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks,
any
Mark.
other comments?
The Equalizer says that the MacBook Air M1 is a beast, literally the best laptop that they've ever owned.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, the combination of performance and battery life and size is unbeatable. And we are going to talk about the battery life of these new ones. Yeah, but if you want a spoiler alert, if you want super long battery life, then the M1 MacBook Air is a good way to go.
Definitely. Yeah, no surprise there.
Yeah, it's not in need of replacement, is it?
What, the M1 MacBook Air?
No,
absolutely not.
I think the only confusion is what we've discussed is that what purpose does the 13-inch MacBook Pro serve now that we've got these new MacBook Pros?
I wonder if they might quietly retire it. That might be what happens. Maybe it was a stopgap for people who needed a touch bar.
But then the gap between the MacBook Air to the MacBook Pro becomes quite large. So that's where I guess then the M2 does make sense.
Yeah, so you could see maybe a MacBook and then a MacBook Air with an M2 chip in it coming along. Maybe. Have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Any other comments for us now on this particular subject, Erin?
Not that I can see.
I'm just going to pick out Jonas' comment there.
This one?
Because we ought to show some love for the 12-inch MacBook. So Jonas loved the 12-inch MacBook. It was very underpowered, though. Yeah.
I'm not even sure I can remember the 12-inch MacBook. I'm having to look it up.
Isn't it the one that they introduced the awful keyboard on? It had the first
the butterfly one.
I've got a feeling it's got the first generation of the butterfly. It was horrible.
Yeah.
To type on.
Yeah. You can still get them.
Yeah, not new.
No, refurbished from Apple. Apparently.
Good. So, Marco, can we highlight Marco's comment there at the bottom? Thank you. Maybe the MacBook Pro 13 gets more ports like the 14 or 16-inch. Yeah, I get that, but then why wouldn't you just have the 14-inch? Because it's the same size. That's the thing. The reason why I say the same size. It's ever so slightly larger. But yeah, it's more or less the same size, same form factor. I think it's confusing to have two MacBook Pros that are. And the more I'm talking about it and saying it, I just can't see why they wouldn't retire it.
It was a stopgap. It was a holdover. That's what it felt like to me.
Anna agrees with me on the keyboard there for the 12-inch MacBook. Great laptop, apart from the keyboard. And Photo Vincent just below. highlights, of course, its big failing was it only had one USB-C port, and it was USB-C, not Thunderbolt as well. So there we go.
Fun days.
I got to highlight that comment from Madison 10, I think. Haven't we, Erin? Would you like to read that one out for us, Erin?
I can. It says, why don't you all dress up and cut your hair to look like Elvis? It works for Luke Miami.
Miami.
Look at the boat race on that. Look at that.
I'm already dressed up.
You can't encourage him. Honestly, Pete would love that. He'd be all over it like a rash. Anyway,
If someone donates $1,000 on this live stream, I'll do it. There you go.
no, don't waste your money, folks. Please don't, because literally YouTube takes half of it. Honestly. Good.
The other thing as well is if we simplify like that with the component shortage, that makes sense, doesn't it?
It
If we
does.
get rid of those
It does.
unneeded models.
Of course, the current MacBook Air and the 13-inch MacBook Pro are Intel chassis as well. And so arguably Apple could do something more interesting if they were able to redesign the chassis. So
And maybe that's what is needed, and then they can justify sticking a more powerful chip in it. Yeah.
good. So let's move on to the next one, which is the Mac Mini.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people were disappointed that we didn't see a Mac Mini with the Pro and the Max chips when the MacBooks were released. And I suspect that was probably due to looking at the various shortages. And there are still products that are difficult to get hold of, aren't there?
Yeah, 24 core GPU MacBook Pros. Max Techs was still waiting for theirs, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know if they've got it yet, but their delivery kept getting pushed out. This one here, the one I'm using is the 24 core M1 Max. So, I mean, we didn't get our orders in that quick, and we managed to get ours. But yeah, some people are saying then they're not getting them.
No.
Anyway, I just noticed a comment from Tom Herbert. He says he loves the channel, so I've got to shout that out. Haven't I?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for
I can't actually see
supporting
some
the
of the
channel.
comments here, so I'm just going to move my. There we go.
I thought you were going to get your glasses out. You are getting a bit old. Tom bought the base 16-inch M1 Pro. Good choice. Nice machine.
Yeah, very good.
Very nice. Where were we? Mac Mini. Of course, current model is using the Intel chassis.
Yeah, so a redesign of the chassis makes sense from that perspective. However, if they radically change the footprint of it, that's going to upset data centers.
Right. So all of the guys who've racked these things out for hosting and other things.
And Apple have a history of making sure that, people who've got a legacy application or, headphone jacks or things like that are backwards compatible with new hardware. So I can't see them doing that.
In fairness, the design that we've got now is quite old. And it wouldn't be unreasonable for Apple to redesign
No, it wouldn't.
at
I
this
was
point
being
in time.
very flippant.
I know you were.
No, it would make sense.
Which chips, though? Which chips are they going to put in it?
M1 Pro and Max, I would say.
What about the M2? Do you think we'll get an M2 Mac Mini? I've got a thought on it since you're
I don't know. Go
doing
on.
the
We've got some
dead
dead
air
air thing. No, go on. I wasn't ready for that question.
No, well, I think maybe we might have to wait for that. I get a feeling we might have to wait for the basic M1 Mac Mini to be upgraded. I think they'll just keep it M1 and go with the Pro and Max chips.
Yeah, because what we got to think about is there is a chip shortage. Apple have pledged to get the transition done by the end of the year. So their focus has got to be on getting rid of the one Intel Mac Mini that's left, which someone did mention in the comments earlier.
Right, yeah.
And as we know, Mac Pro and iMac Pro are what we're waiting for if we're to assume a direct replacement for the current lineups.
Sure.
So trying to foist an M2 in there maybe too soon, but who knows?
Who knows?
Have to wait and
So,
see.
and we will talk about M2 in a bit as a sort of separate subject as to where does that fit in the whole range and what do we expect from it.
What do you think though?
M2 in the Mac Mini?
No, just what do you think about what chips will be in it?
I think it'd be an M1 Pro and M1 Max version, possibly with a new design. I don't know, but I'm not 100% that there'd be a new design.
thing is, the Mac Mini is one of those designs that what else could you do with it? But then I said that about the MacBook Pros, and look what they've done with it. So,
Well, the thing is, just factor in all of the work that they're doing, and retooling and everything costs money.
Yeah.
And I think somebody mentioned something about tooling in the comments there. You know, once you've paid for tooling, it does make sense to sweat that asset. Yeah, as we like to say, sweat the asset. Virtual high five there. Yeah, I don't know. Will it get a new design? Because there's a lot of space in the Mac Mini. It could take an M1 Pro or an M1 Max chip as it is right now. I think it's got the cooling and thermals to support that. The additional ports, well, those aren't machined into aluminium, are they? I don't think. Isn't it a sort of insert piece? Maybe
Yes.
I've got that wrong.
no, it is.
Mm.
I think so.
I should know. I look at the thing often enough.
Yeah, but not at the back of it.
Mm. Well, and that is one of the annoying things about the Mac Mini, isn't it? You've got to reach behind it. Same thing with the iMacs. That irritates me.
Yeah, but it's that Apple aesthetic, isn't it? It's got to look good first.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could see them going for something where you got the kind of, taking a look at my MacBook here, you kind of got a more rounded top to it rather than the hard edges. That would match the current design nomenclature that we've got going on. But as you say, it may not be top of Apple's priority. But the delays are with chips, not with chassis. So.
We have really only had two main designs of the Mac Mini, because the first one they brought out was actually had a G4 in. I had one of those and a slot loading drive in front.
We've
I
still
actually
got
prefer
one
that.
somewhere.
We have. It's an Intel version though.
Right.
But then
But
because
it's
they use
polycarbonate one, wasn't it?
Yeah, they use the same chassis for Intel and G4, and now they've used the Intel chassis for Apple Silicon. I don't see why they wouldn't keep using it. Although I can see comments coming in. Sunday races, you could make it round.
Like the new iPhone.
Yeah. Oh dear. If you joined us late, then you missed that when we were talking about the Circle phone at the start of the
Like
podcast.
Charlie Varley says, the new design for the Mac Mini will have a notch.
There's a YouTuber I like to watch, Crazy Ken. I
Right.
don't know if anyone else in the audience watches Crazy Ken, but he's actually publishing a book of notches. Lots of just pictures of notches, and in like everyday objects you see notches, and once you see them, you won't be able to unsee them again. It's quite a delight.
That's that reminds me of David Thorne. That's the sort of thing David Thorne would do. Look up David Thorne if you want a good laugh and lose
Not
a few
now,
hours
though.
of your
Not
life.
now.
Not now. No,
No,
we're streaming
sake.
now.
And incidentally, if you're not yet subscribed to the podcast channel, because it is a separate channel, then what you're waiting for.
Madison 10 says they might put the Apple logo on the bottom, like putting it on the back of the iMac instead of the front. Yeah, I didn't understand that. And I actually, although I think it's lovely, I think it's a shame that the MacBook Pro is on the bottom of the MacBook Pro, because that's, I know it's there and you know it's there. And I miss the glowy Apple logo. As well.
Yeah, so do I. I'd like to see that come back. Daisy in the Rain. Will they put the M2 in the Apple toaster? Well, there's a question. I don't know. Would it toast your toast efficiently?
It will probably use machine learning to toast the toast to your preferences.
I think you might be better off putting an Intel chip in your toaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there we go.
Very good.
Well, that's what we think about the Mac Mini. So, guys, what do you think? Will they change the design? Are we going to see M2 in the Mac Mini? Does anybody care about the Mac Mini? Are you Mac Mini fans, or?
I think
or
there's
not
some
so
people
much?
here who care about the Mac Mini for sure.
Yeah, I've always liked it as an option, and I think Apple has to have a desktop option. Not everybody wants to go and buy an iMac and have the screen and the computer in one device.
No.
Some people want to use their own kit, and starting price for Mac Pros is rather large.
Yeah, and as you say, data centers, they want to use it. Although, do we know how that's going to perform as a server?
No.
I mean, in terms of performance, it'll be great, but
yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. Lots of people seem to be latching onto the toaster idea here. By lots of people, I mean one.
the iToaster.
But I like the idea of the iToaster. Madison 10 says there is a place for the Mini. My first Mac was a Mac Mini, and I still have it for media. They are incredibly useful. I've been wondering what to use mine for, and I'm thinking about
Are you
making
thinking toast?
I wasn't going to make toast with it. I was going to use it as a DaVinci server,
Interesting.
so that Tom and I can simultaneously work on projects.
I can't see that going wrong at all.
Nothing could possibly go wrong with that. Good comment from Sharon. Would you like to read that out for us, Erin?
It says a slightly new design to fix for Bluetooth issues.
Wow.
Now, that is the face. What you just saw there was the face of someone thinking, who would have blue teeth? But that's just Erin.
Erin,
Yes.
Erin does know what Bluetooth is. Now, I know this because Erin is currently working on her first solo video project. And it's going to be
probably the most popular video the channel's ever released.
Well, what can I say?
But the first time you talked to her about Bluetooth, she didn't you say, wasn't he a pirate or something?
I've never said that. I know what Bluetooth is.
Anyway, if you want to see that video, it will be coming soon, I think, because I've seen Erin working away on it, and it is the new prototype. We've been sent a prototype of the new toolbox, which has Bluetooth, and that was the whole point of that segue. But I think we got sidetracked into just ribbing Erin.
A good point there about fixing the Bluetooth issues.
Yeah, because in fairness, this did happen with the Intel Mac Mini as well for some people, but it's very difficult in a computer like that to isolate the aerials, and it's USB that causes most of the problems, folks. So if you're having a really bad problem with Bluetooth, it's often USB devices, USB 3 devices that are causing it, because they emit, like all cables, they emit radio frequencies, and part of those frequencies is in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. So that affects Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Yeah. And also there are issues with Mac OS and Bluetooth as well, because I still can't use my Logitech Bluetooth keyboard to type in the password when I first boot the Mac.
Yeah,
I have to wait for it to boot into Mac OS, and then I can use it.
No, it is annoying.
Yeah. What else have we got? Throw some more up.
I think Erin is going to sue the pair of you. You have to be a legally registered human being to be able to sue someone else.
I forget. I am just a deep fake. I'm not a real person.
No.
Excellent. Good. I'm glad we had that.
Currently powered by M1, but maybe when M2 comes out, Erin will have a bit more tech knowledge and
finally an upgrade.
Slightly more natural speaking ability and stuff like that, and not the dead eyes. Because that's, if you look at the moment, it's like a shark's eyes. It's just they're dead.
What does that mean?
Erin, you didn't see this comment on the last video either, but someone said, whatever you're paying, Erin, you should double it. And Pete replied with,
00 is still 0.
This is very true.
Anyway,
I feel like we are getting very sidetracked here.
I'd like to just tackle Jonas' comment there, because
which one?
Good work. Down a bit, Erin. Down a bit.
The one about the bag where it says sidetrack.
There you go. Excellent. Got there in the end. Like I say, M2 chip. Can't come fast enough. So Jonas is saying, I like the bag Erin showed off on the main channel. Is it really as nice as it seemed? Would you like to answer that, Erin?
It was really nice. It was really good bag. Would recommend highly.
Erin does like bags, but I think the bags that she likes are more fashion type bags. But after we recorded that episode, I happened to be going to a city on a train, and I took the bag and I wore it as a backpack, and I can tell you it's really comfortable. It is waterproof mostly.
I'm going to be borrowing it tomorrow for a trip to the city, so I'll let you know how I get on with it. By the way, I didn't mention that.
You're not borrowing it.
There's a really interesting comment from...
I just want to finish that. I'll tell you how good it is, Jonas. Pete ain't borrowing it tomorrow because he won't get it out of my hands unless he prizes from them when they're cold and dead, because it is that good and I use it every day. So
can you help me out with that?
No.
Chris Ware makes an interesting point. The keyboard problem is not Bluetooth specific. My wired keyboard on an Intel Mac does the same thing.
Oh.
Well, there we go.
Well done, Apple. Chris, you're a great developer. Perhaps you can fix it for him. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Contribute a fix.
Is there a Patreon for Erin?
No.
There should be.
No, there shouldn't. There really shouldn't.
Let's not go there, shall we, guys?
She wouldn't know how to spend the money. And in order to spend any money anyway, she'd have to be able to leave the building and get out of her chains. So it's just not going to happen. So shall we go on to the next Mac, which is the iMac?
Yes.
Now, what is general consensus with this?
That we're going to get a larger iMac. So the equivalent of the larger 27-inch that we had in the past, but not saying it will be a 27-inch. Expectations it will probably be bigger with the Pro and Max chips in it, the M1 Pro and Max chips. That's the expectation. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
There is a hole in the range. You can still buy an Intel iMac, as we showed in our video test as well. That those top spec 27-inch Intel
beasts.
iMacs still well worth having. However, they need to be replaced as part of the Apple Silicon transition. So in order to replace them, they have to be M1 Pro and M1 Max.
Yeah.
And even then, I think maybe I've got this wrong, but in a couple of things, the Intel iMac is actually still outperforming the M1 Pro.
Yeah, I think it did in the test that we did with the B-roll footage.
So I think that's entirely likely. What a lot of people are wondering, though, is will it get the Pro moniker? Will it be called an iMac Pro?
I don't know. For me, the iMac Pro always seemed like a bit of a black sheep of the family. It never seemed to fit anything, really.
Do you know why that was?
You're going to tell me.
Because it was a stopgap, I think, to appease the professionals who were really annoyed that Apple didn't upgrade the original cheese grater, the 5.1 Mac Pro.
Right.
And then they said that they were going to do something. Tim Cook said they were working on something. And then we got the trash can Mac Pro. But in the meantime, we also got in fact, it came after that, didn't it? So it was the fact they didn't update that one either. So you've gone through that process of the 5.1 didn't get updated. When it did, you had the trash can, which took away all the PCIe slots and went down this dual GPU route, which didn't work out. Everyone got frustrated. It never got updated chips. They never changed from the moment it was launched. And so the iMac Pro comes out to fill that gap in the market for...
And it was priced to reflect that. But it was, as we found, with the i9 with the Vega graphics that we've got the iMac, it didn't ever make any real commercial sense to buy one.
No, not from that perspective. I mean, if you just look at pure performance, then it never makes sense. But pro machines, you've got to understand when we're talking about true pro machines, which a Xeon equipped iMac Pro is, people pay a lot more money for that because they're
got the error checking memory and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Which they might need, and even error checking memory on the graphics card, workstation graphics, and ISV certification and drivers that are tried and tested so that you can rely on your machine. That's why people spend a lot of money on workstations. And the people that are spending the money are the people that get the tax back, get all of the breaks and everything, so it doesn't work out as expensive. And we've been through that before. So I think it made sense.
I don't think it makes sense now.
No, but then it's discontinued.
Well, exactly. So I think we'll be seeing a bigger iMac with those Pro and Max chips in, but I don't know that we'll have the Pro moniker. Although maybe they will. Maybe they'll keep the 24-inch as your consumer iMac, and then the bigger iMac will be your Pro iMac.
So let's just think about what Apple did before. They had the 24-inch consumer iMac. They had a 27-inch consumer iMac. I'm just going to use the term consumer as opposed to something targeted at a professional. Again, people call us out on this. But when I'm saying professional, I'm talking about a creative professional who needs what we've just been talking about from their workstation. So you've got those two sizes of consumer Mac, and then the iMac Pro, which was there as a larger, the same as the larger iMac, but with the Pro components. So will Apple do the same thing again? Will we get another M1 or M2 consumer iMac, so you can have a small one or a large one, and then separately have an iMac
I could
Pro
see that happening.
That's a large one that has the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips in? Or will Apple go a different way with it? Will they say you can have a small or a large consumer Mac with M1, M2, or you can have a small or a large Pro Mac, which has the M1 Pro or M1 Max? Just like on the MacBook Pro, you can have the same chips in the small one as the big one, although clock slightly down for the thermals.
Yeah, possibly. I can't see so much of an argument for having a smaller Pro Mac, though. When it's a laptop / notebook, that makes sense because you want portability. But if you're buying an iMac, what's the main reason you're buying it?
Screen.
Yeah,
It's
so
all
why
about
would you go
screen.
for a small one?
Mhm.
So I think that could be a change. And what I could say, I've mooted this many times, is that we keep the current iMac with the colors will be your consumer one. It looks pretty, it looks friendly. And then the Pro iMac, or the big iMac, whether it gets a Pro moniker, probably will get the Pro moniker the more I think about it, will potentially have a more industrial looking design language akin to the XDR display, or maybe its own thing again.
Yeah, interesting. Well, what do you think, guys? Any thoughts on this? Lots of comments. Perhaps you can pick out a few, Erin.
This one by Mark Sequence says, there may be a third iMac, a larger Pro version, in addition to a 27-inch. I think that's what most of us in tech space at least are hoping for, but a 27-inch display already in the works is for an iMac.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
Would make sense. I mean, I work with quite a large display when I'm doing my video editing. I've got
It's massive.
It's 32 inches. Yeah, it is too big, if I'm honest. It's a little bit too big.
Yeah. And I could, Mark's comment here makes a lot of sense, because 27 that's a really nice size for most people. And when you get slightly bigger than that, like you say, you are starting to get into the realms of, is that a telly to the uninitiated, or is that actually a workstation? So yeah, good shout.
Yeah, I think so.
And I like actually Mark's comment about how about consumer and creative. I think that, that might be I think we use the term pro simply because Apple do, but yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
It's always difficult, isn't it? Because the definition of professional is that you get paid for doing something. So
a journalist could be a pro working on an M1 with 8 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, or even the older 12-inch MacBook.
Yeah.
So what else have we got? Adam Sanchez says, wouldn't be unheard of for Apple to have a third iMac. Most Apple products seem to have 3 options tiers these days. Okay. Yeah, maybe. They've offered 3 sizes of computer before, says Mark. What about Sharon's comment there? Maybe they'll bring back the simplification that Jobs created between pro and consumer devices. Yeah, I do feel that Apple's got an opportunity to do that. And I feel like we're losing our way slightly. I don't know why Apple chose the names M1 Pro and M1 Max, and I wonder whether it might have been just to spite all of the people who were saying M1X, but it doesn't really work, does it? Your MacBook Pro M1 Pro or MacBook Pro M1 Max? Which Max are we talking about? Is it MAX or MACS? It's confusing, isn't it? The naming scheme is confusing. And I think they could do with just tidying that up a bit.
Yeah, but I think you've got to look at where the money goes. And I think I agree with you, Sharon. It would make it simpler. It certainly make it simpler for tech commentators like us. But I think Apple likes to blur the lines, because by doing that, you get someone who perhaps wants a more powerful machine, some kind of idiot who thinks he needs all the power but can't justify, say, a Mac Pro, but likes to think of himself as a pro, going to something that isn't actually a full pro machine. I think it just encourages upselling, and I think Apple's all about marketing and about the money these days. I'm not saying Steve wasn't, but he certainly had one eye on the user.
Yeah, I think for the most part, Apple are doing okay with this transition. But Photo Vincent saying that Apple seems to confuse all of the lineups more instead of less. Yeah, maybe.
Lots of people are asking what the M in M1 stands for, and I
Mac.
Yeah, I think that's what it stands for.
Well, I think this comes. It's obvious, really, when you think about it. But there's an interesting interview that didn't really get much publicity, I don't think, with Craig Federighi and some other people around the time that they engineered M1, and they were very clear about how they designed the M1 from the ground up. And a lot of people still will say the M1 is the A14X, that Apple made an A14X and then decided to rebrand it M1. No, they didn't. They didn't do that, because there's a ton of stuff on the M1 that isn't there on the A14. What they use is the common building blocks. And when we talk about M2, we'll talk about that a bit more. So it uses the same core designs, absolutely, but there's a lot of differences in the unified memory, the SSD controller, lots of the other cores that just don't exist on the A14, and things that iPad OS and iOS could never even use, and still can't use, even the M1 iPad. And I guess we'll come to that too. So I'm pretty sure the M is for Mac.
Yeah, there's a few saying it's mobile quite insistently, but maybe you're right. iMac
Who
G4,
knows? Only
iMac
Apple knows.
G4 Mark sequencers came in the 15, 17, and 20 inch sizes in 2002.
So it did.
Yeah, so you're old enough to remember that, aren't you? I'm not. So I'll take your word for it, though, Mark.
That's the one that I never had and always wanted. I had the Angle Boys screen.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I know the one you mean.
And the G5 came in, I think it did have 3 different sizes, but at different periods of time. I think it was only ever available simultaneously in 2 sizes, the G5.
Interesting.
I don't know. But yeah.
Madison says, don't be surprised if they come out with D chips. For
desktop.
Well,
Ooh.
if you're right, then I'm happy that you're right. We'll wait and see. So you may well be right on that. But yeah, as I was the one who predicted the M naming nomenclature.
Yeah, although
on the
you
internet.
did say, I think as I recall at the time, there was going to be M14.
Well, yeah, that was I was one number out. Take the 4 off.
Excellent, well done. Let's talk finally then about the Mac Pro. Apple, obviously, they've reiterated their commitment to the transition. The Mac Pro was the thing when they first announced the transition where I said, I don't see how they can do that in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because it seemed impossible, but now it doesn't seem impossible.
So your view has changed.
Yeah.
But it will be by the end of 2022, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm
a little bit torn on this one because I think there's a lot of users who need x86 still in their Mac Pro, and I wonder whether there might be some kind of hybrid solution. But I don't know what that would look like. We were talking about it earlier, and
I had some ideas, and you had some ideas, didn't you?
We did, but we're not probably sufficiently qualified to talk about those.
They were fairly wacky ideas about expansion of, rather than we've got in our heads at the moment. I'm just going to say my ideas, because I'm happy to be shot down because you're the tech sort of pinnacle, and I'm just the psychic. I'm the Penfold to your Danger Mouse. Where was I going with this? Yeah, I could see a situation where at the moment we've got this mindset with particularly the Mac Pro and desktop PCs that you plug in a new graphics card or graphics cards, or you plug in a sound card, or you plug in a specialist card. Well, what about if you have a Mac Pro where you can plug in a whole package of M something? So essentially a whole new system on chip or chips that plug in and augment what you've already got there, plus specialist, if you're in machine learning, extra machine learning cores, or if you're into sound, there are dedicated hardware that work really well with the Apple Silicon architecture.
Okay. And that could be possible. It's all doable. I mean, this is not new ground we're treading here. When computing, when I first started getting interested in computing, the computers I was using, Acorn, Amiga, well, you had options to buy 386 cards and things, so you could run DOS apps and stuff. So you have a computer within your computer. Could Apple go down a hybrid road again? It's possible.
Well, it's interesting because Anna, who we know is very much into machine.
Yeah, can we have Anna's
learning? Can you bring that up? x86 is the way to go for machine learning at the moment. The M1 has enormous potential, but isn't quite there yet. So Windows machine with a Tesla V100 GPU is a monstrous setup for machine learning.
So I'm interested to get your opinion on this, Anna, because what we're told to expect for the new Mac Pro is a die that basically is 2 M1 Max chips together, and also a die that has 4 of those on. But when you look at the schematic of the M1 Max chip, and some people have pointed this out, but there are 2 banks of machine learning cores, 2 banks of 16 machine learning cores. And it would appear that the M1 Max therefore has 32 machine learning cores, but 16 of them are switched off. Now, if that is the case, and Apple make a Mac Pro that has 4 M1 Max chips in,
And all those ML cores turned on.
Yeah, 128 machine learning cores as opposed to the 16 that's in the M1. So I'm interested to know, Anna, how do you think that would compare if that did happen to a Windows machine with the Tesla V100? And that's not a cheap GPU, is it?
And while you answer that, Anna, there's an interesting comment just above that, Adam, from Adam, that says that Max Tech seem to think the M1 Pro and Max chips have a secret interconnect fabric on them in order to join multiple chips together, which would work. Because one of the things that took away from my theory is the limit then becomes bandwidth between the systems on chips. But if Apple were have plans in place for that, then that might deal with that. So
it'd be interesting to see how they've done that.
Very exciting.
Let's have Mitch Brown's comment up. So yeah, right at the bottom there.
Oh,
Still got an Acorn Electron in the loft. Well, I'll give you a virtual high five for that. That is the machine. Yeah, I better actually do it. That is the machine that I learned programming on.
Is it?
At age 12, yeah.
Wow.
And actually, the Acorn Electron was old hat by then, but that was what my family could afford, a used Acorn Electron. That was my introduction into computing, and I used to sit and program that thing and in BBC Basic, do all sorts of wonderful things. It's got me sort of started in my career, really.
That's amazing. Do you know what I learned to program on?
Go on.
Punch cards.
Did you?
No.
If you hadn't have said it, Pete, I probably would have come back at you with it.
Yeah. Steam powered punch cards.
Actually, my grandma was a programmer using punch cards during the war.
Was she? Excellent.
Yeah. I don't know much about it, but I know that she was.
So
we'll give, I've probably posed a really awkward question for Anna, and she's now got to type furiously to answer it. And what we probably should have done is thought ahead of time.
Do you think the Intel model will continue to be sold?
Okay, good question. Well, if Apple is transitioning all of their Macs to Apple Silicon, then that would suggest no.
No. But do you think it will be? Because there's a whole load of pros out there that rely on their Mac Pro for their livelihood at the moment. Are they really going to get rid of it that quickly?
I don't know. I think a lot of it will depend on what Apple can bring. So the people that are still struggling with moving to Apple Silicon, musicians is a big category. A lot of things still don't work properly with Apple Silicon. And if you've got a lot of things going on, you might have add-in cards in your machine. So you need PCI Express. Video editors is another example of that. You know, you might have, like, for instance, we use a lot of Blackmagic kit, and they sell all sorts of capture cards and other sorts of cards.
Red do the same, don't they?
Yeah, accelerator cards, those kind of things. So professionals might need that stuff. As Anna was just saying, you know, data science, machine learning, and other things. There are areas where Apple Silicon is not quite ready yet. I think in virtualization as well. If you need virtualization and you need to run an x86 virtual machine, I'm not convinced it's there yet. So
what about, because let's just go back for a minute to the hybrid stuff. You were talking about a 386 and an Amiga back in the day, so that you could run DOS on an Amiga. Are you thinking that potentially you could have a hybrid solution with a Mac Pro where you got an x86?
I think it's possible. I mean, the two issues here. First, issue number one is, will there be PCI Express? Well, there's absolutely no reason why the M chips can't do PCI Express. So that's sorted. I don't think there's any issue with that at all. So it's down to software, isn't it? And a lot of this is third-party software. And will Apple care about fixing that? I don't think they're going to delay their transition to.
No, they're not going to. It's a small but important part of the market for them. But it's a small part. So yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you guys think? What do you think about the Mac Pro? Can we have Adam Sanjay's comment up, please, Aaron? So assume maybe they would try something similar to how AMD links CCXs, which is the core clusters on their higher end Ryzen chips. Yeah, entirely possible.
I like Sharon B's comment, actually. Different stacks configured for different professionals.
Yeah, and I did a video, if you recall, Pete, some months ago where I was talking about
videos.
Okay. You usually pretend that you do, though. It's just nod along. Yeah, I did a video about the Mac Pro and what Apple might do with it. And I was talking about different accelerator cards and different optimizations so that a professional could do exactly that. Like when you went to the sweet shop when you were a kid and you stood at the pick and mix counter with your pennies and you got the bag of sweets that you wanted. Well, maybe the Mac Pro will be like that, and you can build something that works for your specific workload.
That would be very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna has come back with a reply. Thank you, Anna. Would you like to read that out for us, Erin? Thanks.
I would love to read that for you. It says, I think it will be a wait before Apple Silicon gets close to the V100, even with more cores switched on. The software optimization is the key barrier, and I think this will limit the potential for some time.
Okay,
Thank
interesting.
you, Anna.
Thank you.
Appreciate your insights on that.
Yeah, I have been chatting with Anna via email, and we will get Anna on the program at some point to talk about machine learning and other stuff, because we don't really know much about it.
Now, other than Erin, we've not really had much success with AI. Or
it's not difficult to make an Erin, though, is it?
No,
let's face it. So
could probably do it with the ZX81, to be fair.
Excellent. So that's what we're expecting from Macs in 2022. But 2022 that's a whole length of time from now. That's a whole 13 months of opportunity for these different launches.
Yeah.
And it will be affected by the silicon shortage and component shortage. So it may be that Apple, despite having things ready, maybe some of the things that we've talked about, they might have them ready, but they opt not to stick them out there because they don't have the components available and they have to prioritize. And if they're going to prioritize, then they'll be focusing on the areas which are most important, which are the two that I mentioned at the start, which is Mac Pro and larger iMac.
Yeah.
In fairness, the Intel Mac Mini that's still being sold, I mean, in recent times, there's been a more powerful Mac Mini available, sort of 2 levels. They even have different colors, don't they? So,
do they?
Yeah, it's a space gray, I think, the more powerful
Interesting.
one. It's possible that Apple would also do that one as well. But I do think they might need to prioritize. We'll have to see how it goes, see what happens in the world. Let's move on to another area of product line, and we're not going to spend as long on this one. And that is new iPads. Now, I've seen it said that we're getting a new standard iPad, a new iPad Air, and a new iPad Pro all in 2022. What do you think about that?
A mixed response.
Go on.
So we normally get a new iPad every year, do we not?
I'm not sure we do.
Standard iPad. Doesn't it normally get a new chip every year, or is it every other year?
I don't know. Can anyone answer that for us out there? Does the base level iPad get updated every year?
Maybe it doesn't. In which case, we got an update to that this year, didn't we? So I don't think that's likely. I could see an iPad Air coming because although it was only last year that we had the current iPad Air with the colors, that came out in, was it October 2020, which obviously it feels like very recent, but as we said, we're 13 months away from the end of 2022. So about October next year, could we see an iPad Air? Quite possibly. But I think the question with that is, what will they do to it? Because the gap between the iPad Air and the iPad Pro is marginal at best, I would say. So some people are talking about putting in a 120 hertz screen into the iPad Air, but then why would you go for the smaller of the iPad Pros?
Yeah, and this is one of those areas where commerciality has to factor in, because you could argue, well, you're getting actually you don't get the better screen in the smaller iPad. You get a 120 hertz screen, but it's not the XDR display. You do get Thunderbolt and M1. Does anyone use that on an iPad?
How much have you used your M1 on your iPad Pro?
Well, you can't use the performance of the M1, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
I have used the Thunderbolt port, but I'm not convinced everyone does. So if you don't need Thunderbolt and you're happy with USB-C, then yeah, there's not a big difference, is there, between those two models from a consumer perspective? Looking at those two models, they look the same, and there's not really much to go for the Pro over. If they go and put a flash display in the new iPad Air,
and it comes in different colors, so
yeah,
maybe an A15 chip.
Yeah, but this in the next year, I suppose towards the end of the year, it will be 2 years, so it will be due.
Oh, the iPad Air, yeah.
Yeah.
With that, we said that a
All
minute
right.
ago.
I
You
apologise.
obviously Had some
I
kind
try
of
to tune you out, honestly, Pete,
moment.
when you start talking.
But what about a new iPad Pro?
Well, I don't know about this. It's less than a year old, isn't it?
Doesn't make sense to me.
No, I mean, some are saying that it might get a new design, but I don't really know what you could do with the design. I mean, it's already brilliant. How do you? I'm sure they could make it more brilliant. They would probably add a notch, Pete.
Yeah, that would please many people, I'm sure.
Maybe an additional port. I think I'd be more interested in seeing software development for the iPads.
Yeah, it does feel like it's stalled a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's an interesting
Understandable.
rumor here from Sharon.
Are we not saving this? Oh, I thought we were going to save these for the end.
But this
Go on.
this one. Shall we save it for the end?
Well, we can't now. We put it up on screen. Go on, read it out, Pete.
Have you heard the rumor of the 15-inch iPad? Big screen, but less powerful. Yeah, why would you? I suppose. Why would you
well,
do
first,
that?
let's answer the question. No,
I haven't heard.
I haven't heard that rumor, but I don't really keep my ear to the ground on rumors because I find it a bit draining, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Do you remember, Pete? In fact, we still.
Sorry, I've just seen a comment from Sunday Racers about what the new iPad could do.
I think I could make it round.
Very good.
We've got somewhere a Dell XPS computer that is in fact a tablet and like a 20-inch size.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I know the one.
And it was actually quite an interesting device for two people to sit and work together on. Would I want to use a 15-inch iPad though? I mean, that's basically the same size as this laptop, maybe just a touch bigger. It's quite large.
I think it would work. Because the 12-inch, do you remember when we got the 12-inch Pros?
Yeah.
You were thinking, oh, this is far too big. And now it just seems normal to me.
Well, like the phones as well. I mean, everything's just getting bigger instead of smaller. Remember the old days when everything was getting smaller and you had a phone that was like that?
That little Nokia thing that, you could mash all the buttons at once.
Yeah. Anyway, there we
my
go.
fingers anyway.
iPad Pro, maybe they'll chuck an M2 in it and it won't be able to use that either.
No, they won't do that.
So I'm
not in 2022. Anyway.
And of course, the iPad Mini has just been done. Will they maybe do a slight refresh on it and move or retime the position of the screen controller?
Well, so you don't get jelly screen.
I mean, well, you will get a jelly scroll effect, whatever you do with it. But it just seems to me with the Mini, it's just got this very unfortunate timing that creates a particular optical effect.
Speaking about jelly screen, what about a roll-up iPad?
Like that.
That would be great. Roll it up
like a scroll. And we'll
scroll
be
pad.
Proper full circle then, won't we?
Oh, we will. Yeah, Apple does do
That'd
that.
Be awesome. Okay, excellent. So what do people think about the iPads?
We've got a few things here.
Read some out for us then, Erin, if you...
The Equalizer says, has anyone else noticed that iPad with the latest iPad OS on it can now unlock this encrypted on a Mac?
Ooh, I haven't noticed that. That was interesting.
You can have a play with that now. Good shout on that one.
Thanks. I will check that out.
Anna, interesting comment there. I wonder if we will see pro apps for the iPad next year. Do you know, I really hope so, if only to stop him bleating about the fact that he's got the most ridiculously overpowered iPad. And I never get any overpowered devices that I don't need.
You never do
ever.
that, do you, Pete?
So, no. Yeah, that would be good. That would be good.
Have you used all 64 gigabytes of your RAM yet, Pete?
I've got it past 32.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well done. I took a gamble. I'll own it right now. I took a gamble and I lost. I took the gamble that Apple were only putting the M1 chip in because in my logical brain, it's like, but iPadOS can't use the M1 chip, can't use all of its features. So why would you put it in? So it must be that they're going to bring out something that's going to use the performance of that chip.
It's a reasonably logical argument.
And then I thought, what might that be? Might it be Logic Pro? If that's the case, I'd rather like to have 16 gigs of RAM, but you can't buy that separately. You've got to buy a terabyte of storage as well. So before you know it, I dredged the company account and I have my white elephant iPad. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment.
At least, have you ever tried editing on an escalator with it?
I haven't done that yet.
Maybe you should try that.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Mark's sequence comment, please. Erin, would you like to read that out for us?
It says, we went smaller and smaller until we couldn't anymore, or until no one would buy it. I imagine we will continue going bigger and bigger until no one buys, then turn back to smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there was an alien race that had a coin that was so big it spanned a solar system? Do you think we'll get an iPad that big before it's like, you just have to swipe, or one that you have to swipe with your hand to unlock?
Yes, Pete. I
That
think
would be
that will
awesome,
definitely happen.
It would be awesome.
This, though, we joke about it, but this is fashion, isn't it? This is exactly what happens in fashion.
Yeah.
The fashions, they just go round and round and round, and Apple are doing the same thing. Is Apple a fashion brand?
Yes, of course it is.
Interesting.
Yes, it has been for a long time.
I think maybe we need to dig deeper into that in another podcast episode.
Omar.
Hello,
Welcome.
Omar.
Welcome. Hopefully you've subscribed. Thanks for joining the live stream. Can you please talk about the ethics of personalized advertising?
I think we would do that, but I think that would probably benefit a segment of its own.
Yeah,
at some point.
Could we talk about that perhaps in the new year?
Because
we appreciate ideas for content.
Yeah, and Pete and I our day job, if you like,
The Triganic Pew. Thank you very much, Sunday Racers.
Okay. Our day
I
job
feel
is.
like I know you very well somehow.
Thanks. Can I talk now? So can you stop? Thanks. Brilliant. Is that all you've got to do to shut Pete up? That's amazing. Why didn't I find this before, Erin?
What were you going to say?
I know exactly what you're going to do. I was trying to respond to. I was trying to respond to Omar. Come on, one comment at a time. One comment at a time. The day job for Pete and I is that we have a digital agency doing website development and marketing.
Yes.
And personalized advertising is something that we are involved with to a greater or lesser degree. So we do have opinions on it, and maybe we will talk about that in future. You may now take a comment, Pete.
Definitely. No, I just thank you for the Triganic Pew, fellow Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan there. That's the giant coin that spanned. It was a solar system, I think, but it was triangular as well. It was completely
What was the
impractical.
robot called? I like the robot.
Marvin. Yeah, I can see why you might like the manically depressive robot, brain the size of a planet.
Sunday Racer says, if I can have Lightroom Classic on an iPad, then Apple can take my money. Yeah. And I suspect Adobe will too. Every month for the rest of your life. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Anyway, we are. I feel like we've digressed a bit with those comments, but thank you for them.
So we wanted to talk briefly about what is M2 as we understand it. And I think there is some confusion because where do you peg that in the lineup of CPUs? So M2 is not the step up from M1 Max. It's a step up from M1. So it's the base level chip will be getting an upgrade, and then at some point in the future, and I'm not convinced it will be next year, but who knows?
No, I'm not.
We'll see M2 Pro and M2 Max maybe, or whatever Apple decide to call it at that particular point in time. So it's based on the same core designs as A15, and as we said earlier, those are building blocks. So the chip will be built from the ground up to be Mac specific, but it will use those building blocks that we've already seen in A15. And those are, what are they called?
So the performance core is called an Avalanche, and the efficiency core is called Blizzard.
Excellent. So with that in mind, we don't think it won't be a revised A15. It's not going to be an A15X rebranded or anything like that. But it will use those core designs. Possibly they'll be able to run them at higher frequencies with better thermal envelopes. Who knows?
Yep.
Because of course you've got those cores running in your phone's got one, in fact.
Yeah.
And we did see with the phones about a 10% jump in single core performance, I think, something like that. So maybe that's what we'll get to see with M2 versus M1. And I think they need to do that because of Alder Lake.
Yeah.
So that's Intel's new CPUs, and they are pushing forward with single core performance. I'm pretty sure it's overtaken M1.
Well, I said they were knocking on the door early, and you said they've opened the door. So I think you're right there, and I think that's why the M2 has to come at some point. Interesting comment there from Chris. I don't think we'll see the M2 till we've fully transitioned to Apple silicon. That is possible, but you just got to think about Apple's got to think about the readies. So we look at it from where's the money coming from.
Yeah, and we've just been talking about the M1 iPad. Why did Apple put the M1 chip in the iPad? Because it was there, available in production. Why create a new chip just for the iPad Pro and then put that into fabrication? And in these difficult times, I think that they have to do that. So using the existing chips that they've got that they're already struggling to meet demand on would make a lot of sense. And maybe we'll see the M2 things just hang on a bit.
Yeah, quite possibly.
How many cores do we think?
4 of each, so 8 in total. So 4 efficiency, 4 high performance.
You don't think they would go 6 performance and 2 efficiency like that binned entry level M1 Pro?
I suppose they could.
I think the issue with that is that then it would outperform that M1 Pro, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that comes down to timing, doesn't it? If you have an M2 this year that does that, then that doesn't make commercial sense for Apple. If, as Chris is suggesting, we get the Apple Silicon transition out of the way, and M2 comes, say, in 2023, then it would be acceptable at that point to say, in some areas the M2 can catch an M1 Pro in certain areas because you're taking the next leap forward. And
only that entry level binned one though.
That's the entry level binned one. But I could see it being acceptable at that point. I think people would be pretty annoyed if an M2 came out at some point next year that trumped their M1 Pro.
Of course, the thing that we said all along about the M1 is that the area that it's weak is the GPU. So I do think the M2 ought to address that. I think it needs to step up because, again, Intel's been moving the goalposts. Their Xe onboard integrated graphics are almost on par with M1. So it stands to reason that they're probably going to pass by M1 in short order. And bear in mind, I think these laptop chips, the older late stuff, is the first time they've got notebook chips out of their 10 nanometer process, which is the same as 7 on TSMC. And I saw a report about a year ago that said that Intel had pre-purchased some of TSMC's 3 nanometer.
Interesting.
So I don't think that the battle is over yet. Of course, x86 is always going to use more power, but can they get the same levels of performance and better levels of performance? Yeah, possibly. And I think Apple need to be aware of that.
Well, Apple will be. And I think 2022, we're going to see some interesting stuff. The last 18 months has felt very Apple dominated. That's been exciting. But, a lot of people have been rubbishing Intel. We've always said Intel and to a lesser degree, AMD are already doing some amazing stuff, but Intel aren't dead. We did a video on this a while back. They've had a setback, but they are coming back hard. They're coming back swinging, and 2022 is going to be very interesting for computing.
Yeah. So maybe for the GPU cores, maybe 9 or 10 GPU cores. I'm saying 9. That's because we got 7 or 8 at the moment with the standard M1. So 9 or 10 would, on the M2 type chip, would push it within fighting distance, but far enough away from the M1 Pro,
I would say.
So who knows? There we go. That's what we think for M2. Any thoughts? Any comments that we can bring in?
Chris Ware says the question is, who do they want to compete with, AMD or Intel, who both operate on a mostly 2-year cycle?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I think the question comes down to, and I don't have the answer to this, it's just a question, is are Apple going to continue a 2-year cycle with their computing devices, or are they going to do what they do with these, which is update them every year? And you might argue, well, they're different products, but let's face it, how much does Apple get from someone absolutely always having to have the latest iPhone? There's a lot of commercial reasons why that might be appealing to Apple, particularly as a lot more at the consumer end now are getting MacBooks. It's a question of Apple's strategy more than whether they're competing directly with Intel and AMD on raw performance.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this question always comes down to software as well, because a lot of I've seen this a lot in the comments, you know, for my videos where you'll get Windows fanboys in or whatever. It's just, you know, why are you buying a Mac? Why are you using a Mac? Buy a PC. You can build a PC for cheaper that's more powerful. Yeah, we all know that. But that doesn't help you if you need to use software that only runs on Mac OS. And a lot of people are tied into that and don't have any options. You know, we go back to the professional audio industry. You know, if you're using Logic Pro and all of your customers are using Logic Pro, then, you know, that's what you got to use, and it ain't available for PC anymore. So it's always a software question, I think. And I don't think that Apple would see, I don't think they see AMD and Intel as competitors. I think they look at computing slightly differently to that. But they do need to offer something that's comparable, you know, and I do feel that a bit more GPU performance in the entry-level laptop would not hurt at all.
Yeah. Interesting comment from Jonas there.
Yeah,
kind
good
of
point.
goes here. They don't build CPUs for a living. Apple are a different business from Intel and AMD. And you know, we talked about it a minute ago. Bit of a fashion brand, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they can be.
So
can be. I'm conscious time is ticking on, and we wanted to talk about our experience with Apple Silicon. So maybe we'll just dive into that. I mean, we have sort of covered some of this as we've been going along, but let's. The first thing to say, I think we're just going to focus on a few niggles that we found.
We've spoken how great these machines are, so you can take that as a given. We think these machines, we think Apple Silicon are great, but there are some niggles. Yeah,
and you know, there's no argument from us here. We're buying these things for our business. You know, that's why we have these machines on the channel. The machines we've been testing are going to people within our business. So we're investing in Apple Silicon. So we are absolutely on board with it. But no product is perfect. And you always have to make compromises, whether you're choosing a PC with Windows, whether you're choosing a PC with Linux, whether you're choosing a Mac, whatever you choose, you're making compromises in some ways. So let's just put that out there, and then let's talk about all the things that really annoy us.
Yeah.
I was answering a comment today from someone on one of my older videos about the USB performance on the M1 Mac, and it's still great. It still annoys me that Apple have not fixed this.
It's still great, did you say?
Great. As in cheese grates.
Yeah.
Like a rusty cheese grater, it grates on me. That USB for, and we're not talking about some kind of obscure drives, we're talking about mainstream drives, Samsung T5 drive, plug it in, you're getting much less performance than you get on an Intel Mac.
Yeah, that is annoying.
Or a PC. It's massively annoying. And the thing is, there are chipsets which do work, not at full speed, but much closer to it. So this is a software issue. Why haven't Apple addressed it and fixed it?
Because it's not important to them.
So anyway, if you're interested in that, I did do another video on it. The USB performance in the new MacBooks is better. They have improved it with the new chips. And Thunderbolt performance, it's important not to get confused with this. Thunderbolt performance is fine.
Just on the USB.
It's just USB, Can I talk briefly about what I call the butter issue?
Yeah, I saw that in the notes, and I was going to ask what the butter issue is.
So when I had the trash can Mac Pro.
Didn't know you had one of those.
Did you not?
No.
You should watch my channel sometime.
Don't watch your videos.
Erin watches all my videos, I know that.
Yeah, I do, yep.
And reads all the comments. She loves it. When you use that computer, it felt premium because everything you did on it was buttery smooth. It didn't seem to get in the way. And this is a very tenuous and subjective opinion, but when I got the M1 Mac, it's faster in a lot of things than that amazing Mac Pro. But without the buttery smoothness, it just seems more raw. Yeah. I mean, overall it's faster, but it's slow then fast, then slow then fast. And it varies its speed in a way that the x86 Mac didn't do. It was just slow or just medium or just fast. And it didn't seem to be, it sort of ran at a more consistent pace. And I can't put my finger on it because what happens when you try to replicate the issue is it doesn't replicate.
I think I know what you mean,
Yeah.
because obviously I maxed this thing out, and it is quicker. If you're rendering stuff and that, it is astonishing. But then sometimes what you get is lag. And what can only be described as glitches. So, for example, I opened a spreadsheet the other day with 11,000 rows in it. Quite a lot. It was quite a lot of dense data, quite a lot of columns, but there was no formulas or anything. It was just a data set, which I then wanted to manipulate. So one of the things I wanted to do was to take a date in a particular format, convert it to a value, and present it in a different format for all 11,000 rows. And it took about a minute to create that column, and then I had a beach ball while it thought about it. Tried to replicate it today, same spreadsheet, same conditions, did it almost instantly. The sort of performance we expect from an Apple Silicon machine.
It's weird, isn't it? Isn't it weird?
Well, and then I get things like my Magic Mouse stopped scrolling the other day until I turned it off, disconnected Bluetooth, and reconnected it. At first, I thought it was the app I was using. There was something wrong with the app, but it was then happening on everything. So very odd.
Have you had, when you're on a busy web page, I'd be interested to know if anyone else has had this who's listening. When you're on a busy web page that's loading in, loading in all the clickbait and the adverts and everything else. Sky News is a classic example of this. Sometimes it'll load stuff down the side of the page, and then you've got all the clickbait advertising at the bottom. And you scroll down the page and it lags. And I don't expect it to lag because it doesn't on the iPad. So why does it on the Mac?
I was about to answer that until you said it doesn't on the iPad. So I wonder if some of this is that the machines are so fast that we're exposing bottlenecks in other things. So, for example, sometimes when you open, say, an Office document or what have you, you expect it to be instantly open, and it isn't. And that's not actually, when you think about it, because the software is not ready. It's because it's going to the SharePoint server or your iCloud or your OneDrive to collate a list of recently opened documents, and that takes a few seconds. So there's a bottleneck of your internet speed and the servers. And maybe that's the same with your web pages, and maybe the pages on your iPad. We'd have to do some empirical testing. Maybe they're already cached.
Yeah. Interesting. And one other thing I found as well is clicking. I was having weird things with clicking. I did turn off force click in the system preferences. I use tap to click, and sometimes I find you tap and it doesn't actually do it. You have to physically click the touchpad. But I've noticed the same thing on my iPad with the Magic Keyboard. And I'll be there with the touchpad, tapping, tap, 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 click, click, click. Nothing's happening. And then you just touch the screen and it works. So there's something going on.
Photo Vincent says he's had the Magic Mouse issue.
Ah, okay.
Stops responding. Yeah, swipes across spaces. So yeah, mine was in the vertical plane, scrolling up and down comments or something like that. But yeah,
I'll just say cheerio to Jonas.
Oh, thanks for joining us, Jonas.
Thank you.
All the best.
Adam Sanchez, just one above there, Erin. Thank you. I know what you mean, Dave, but can't put it into words either. My M1 iMac feels the same every now and then. Yeah, it is a thing. It's just, how do you...
It's so tenuous.
It's not scientific, so it's very difficult to describe it. But I think your assessment is probably correct. I think what's happening is the computer's getting so quick now that it's exposing other limitations in computing, and I guess those things will get fixed and we'll move on.
The equalizer says my keyboard goes super slow until I restart it. Do you find that you're typing away and nothing's coming up on screen, and then all of a sudden you'll get a splurge of text? Because I have had that, but not just on my Apple Silicon. I had that on my previous MacBook as well.
So I think some of these things could actually just be Mac OS related, and we're only experiencing them because we're using Mac OS on Apple Silicon.
Yeah, which has been rebuilt from the ground up for Apple Silicon, hasn't it?
Yes.
I thought that's what they had.
Yeah,
so
possibly, yeah.
You think about your trash can, that was using a Mac OS that's very robust and very established. So,
but it did run. I mean, before I sold it, I put it on Big Sur, and it was still the same.
Did you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Okay.
Let me talk about my M1 iPad, because that's M1, and we spoke about it earlier. I think if you're looking for an iPad Pro, you're better off getting one of the previous generations used to save yourself a bunch of money. The M1 iPad Pro, the large one we're talking about here, is heavier than what came before it. And it's heavy enough that when you put it on the Magic Keyboard, because I did use the Magic Keyboard for a while with my A12X version, it changes the balance point. It's subtle. It's slightly heavier, but it's subtle. It changes the balance point. It's not as useful when you're trying to watch videos in bed, I find, which we all do with our iPads, don't we? No, Taryn doesn't. You have got an iPad. We gave you an iPad.
I love it.
Excellent.
When was the last time it was turned on?
This morning.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Okay.
Do you ever watch videos on your iPad?
I do indeed. Lots of YouTube videos.
Okay, good. Just not mine.
No.
The screen is amazing if you're watching HDR content. But if you're not watching HDR content, it's no different to
It's just a screen.
It's the same screen. I mean, it is actually the same display on the previous model. It's the backlighting that changed. It's got the mini LED backlighting. And it has the shadow around the edge of the screen, which drives me up the wall. And I've spoken about that before. So you don't get that on the A12X version. And battery life is not as good on the M1 version as it is on the A12X version. It doesn't last as long.
Interesting. As you speak about battery life, I think that's something else we found about the MacBook Pros is
yes,
they're great, but they're not as good as the M1.
Well, compared to because we've got the 14-inch with the entry level M1 Pro chip, and the battery life on that thing is insane. I mean, I used it over 2 days, I think, and I didn't charge it. It was amazing. Definitely can't do that with the M1 Max version, though. So the battery on these is still amazing compared to any notebook that I've had previously. But if you're doing a game or something like that, doing a game.
It's like driving a plane.
That's it. So when you're driving a plane, you can get maybe 2 to 3 hours battery life out of it, depending on what you're doing and how bright your screen is and all the other things. And that's pretty amazing for gaming. In the real world, you can easily get a whole work day out of one of these on battery. Have you managed that?
Oh, yeah.
But it does depend what you're doing. And I checked Zoom. I did a 2-hour Zoom call the other day, and I started at 100% and I finished at 67%. So 2 hours of Zoom takes a third of the battery.
Are you using Apple Silicon version of Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
No. No, well, that's a good point. It's not obvious, is it, on their website?
No, absolutely not.
So battery life on these new machines are really good if you're going for one of the Pro options. The Max chips, they do suck the battery a lot more because there's a lot more going on.
It's just, yeah, fair enough.
Coming back to then the M1 iPad, and I've seen some comments scrolling past, and a lot of people think about it the same way as I do. I do feel that Apple has been a bit unfair with that. The Thunderbolt, for example, doesn't work at Thunderbolt speeds. It doesn't work with a lot of devices. So that idea of being able to upgrade to have Thunderbolt, actually not that great. USB is even slower than on the M1 Max.
Yep.
So unless you're playing games or doing maybe video editing in LumaFusion or doing some Lightroom, not Classic though, or Affinity Photo or something on your iPad Pro, you don't need an M1 iPad Pro. You can't use it unless they change iPad OS. You cannot use that additional performance. That's my experience with the M1 iPad.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
I haven't got one. I've still got my 2018. I'm very happy with it.
Good. You are a dinosaur.
I do like, I don't know how to pronounce this person's names. People we need a snow leopard year where they just focus on cleaning things up in the OS. I think that's a good shout. And I also like Anna's reply to that, or a Mac OS apology to fix all the years of bugs. That's brilliant. Thank you for that, Anna.
Very good. Equalizer's asking, is your M1 iPad M1? I don't understand that. I've missed your joke.
I think there's a joke there. I think it's because you say that your M1 iPad a lot.
Is it? Oh, okay. I get the joke now. I'll stop saying my M1 iPad now.
It's like tuna fish.
Yeah, Pete.
That's an in joke.
Right. Yeah, Pete. Let's just get a quick a quick consensus of this. When you're talking about tuna, as in making a sandwich or some pasta or anything else, do you refer to tuna as tuna, or do you refer to it as tuna fish? We'd like
let us know in your comments. Just let us know, okay?
help us settle a little debate here. That would be great. Equalizer is peed off how slow the USB is on M1. Yeah,
You and us both.
yeah. It's actually a deal breaker. I was speaking to or chatting with someone in the comments who's a musician, and he's using Logic Pro, and he's got his external libraries, and it's not fast enough. He keeps getting disk errors.
No one is asking, by the way, if you like tuna.
I think
Just asking how you refer to it. And what has FM radio got to do with tuna, Chris Ware?
I've got no
Are
idea.
you having a stroke?
Cat food, says Sunday Racers.
Devon.
And go on, Erin, read it out.
Here in Canada, tuna fish sandwich.
Well, I'm going to be polite to Devon and say that's how they do it in Canada. But here in the UK, Pete, I think you are wrong. And I think most people are saying tuna or now we get Chris's joke because everyone has explained it to us. We're a little bit slow. Don't laugh, Erin.
It's been a long live podcast.
It has, and
it feels like it's getting to that point.
It is, and it's getting to the point where normally, Pete, you would do an appalling jingle.
What I do is I get the microphone and put it down next to my laptop with a pre-prepared jingle.
But
that's not happening today.
It's not, because what we've got instead is Photo Vincent very kindly sent us his own rumour mill jingle, and which we will critique after we've heard it.
The Rumour Mill.
Well,
I'm.
It's certainly no worse than anything you would have done, Pete. But
That's fair.
Also, don't take this the wrong way, Photo Vincent. I don't think it's any better than anything you would have done either.
Let's just say the bar has neither lowered nor raised.
The bar is still the bar.
Yeah, there is still a bar. You might see some interesting things in season 3.
Oh, I don't know that I am looking forward to it. I was about to say I'll look forward to that, but I don't think I am looking forward to it. If you're going to sing again, then it's going to be bad news.
Well, there's not just singing. Rap is a possibility.
So if you're fresh to the podcast, the point of the rumour mill is to assess some rumours and give them a traffic light kind of green. We think, yeah, that's likely to happen. Amber and red, definitely not. Do we have any, Tom, sort of pre-prepared that Erin might read for us? And
what
is that a yes or a
no? That's
fine. So if anybody's got a rumour they want to stick in, please do so. First of all, though, the equalizer.
Yeah.
Read it out for us, Erin.
Is that a rumour?
It says, that jingle sounds like someone's cat ran across their keyboard.
He's obviously cottoned onto your technique, Pete.
Yeah. Thanks very much. I'm going to put that as a solid green. Anna says more singing in season 3, Pete. Would you like more singing, Anna? Just let me know.
Don't. Please, Anna.
No.
No
one's
it.
asking you lot.
No.
We have to sit here, though. I mean, it's...
Yeah, okay. All right. Sunday Racer says if you start rapping, I'm calling the police.
Yeah.
I do feel like I know this person. I feel like I know who you are, but I'm not sure who you are. But I have a feeling I do know who you are. So I'm going to, in true Liam Neeson style, I will find you and I will rap.
Okay. Pete, you had a prepared rumour.
I do. Now, this is interesting. This people might go, oh, not this again. But this is about the Apple car. Okay, so everyone rolls their eyes at this point. But what's interesting?
Will CarOS support all of the functions of the M1 chip?
Oh, can you imagine? Can you imagine if you're driving in your Apple car and software updates needed, or you get the beach ball of death as you're about to go around a corner? It's like nothing happens, or the scroll doesn't work. Anyway, investment bank Morgan Stanley. Have you heard of them?
I
have raised its Apple price target on a share to $200.
What's it at now?
Don't know, but they've raised it.
Okay.
At the time of Which
so
was
it could have
today.
been
No,
so it could have been 199.99.
No, I should have checked that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the reason they've done that is by what is expected from the company, and their words, relatively soon, as well as short-term drivers like App Store and iPhone income. So analysts point out that Apple shares up until now haven't appeared to bake in the impact of new products such as the AR VR stuff we talked about last week.
Yep.
And also the self-driving car markets, and the new price target reflects that. So Apple Car is no secret. There's been so many mock-ups and awful things about it. But what we're talking about here, they're calling it Project Titan, as a self-driving car, electric vehicle, basically Apple's version of Tesla.
Yeah.
So what do we think? They're saying the rumor is expected to launch 2024, which isn't that far away.
Well, I have to go amber with it. Are Apple working on car technology, a car, in conjunction with other manufacturers? I mean, definitely, we know that. Is it going to come in 2024? Don't know. Will it? I mean, I saw a render on Twitter the other day.
Oh, that was awful. If it's the one I'm thinking of.
I won't be buying that, just like I won't be buying any of those BMWs with the beaver teeth grille. Goodness me. What were they thinking? Will it look good? The thing is, Tesla cars
Don't look good.
I was going to say they do look good.
Different. Well, it's subjective then, isn't it? I think they look awful.
Interesting.
I
Erin
love
looks
Teslas.
confused.
They're my favorite cars. I think they're really cool.
Do you?
They've got like a little fireplace. Like you can like program like the screen to have like a little fireplace.
That just reinforces my view that they look awful.
So, sorry, I just need to cycle back to this. So the most important thing to you when considering the purchase of an expensive new vehicle, Erin, is whether or not you can have a fireplace on the digital display in the front of the car.
I'm a very simple woman.
I don't think that is simple. I think that's a few years ago, people would have assumed all sorts of things about that. Oh, yes, I'll have a fireplace in my car, don't you know?
Will the Apple Car have windows? Ha ha ha! Very funny, Chris. That's good. Can I just say?
Go on, finish your rumor, Pete. You
Well,
tell me what you think. I've said amber. What do you think?
I think it will come, but I think it will be hit by delays of various sorts. So, having said that, the EV market, the electric vehicle market, is very, very, very hot. Apple will want to get in amongst that, but we know that Apple are often late to certain parties, but they then either redefine the sector or the product segment, or they claim to have invented it anyway. So we'll have to see. I'd just like to bring up Anna's comment about the Apple Watch. Although also thank you, Anna, for saying you'd like more of my singing, as probably the most. I was going to say one of the most intelligent subscribers we have, but that's probably not fair. But you are a very smart person. I salute you, and you will get more of that. But your rumor here from Anna, rumors are saying that Apple are to bring out a rugged sports version of the Apple Watch.
I've seen this rumor. Yeah. I don't see why they wouldn't do that.
Makes sense to me. I'll give that a green.
Green. I mean, there's definitely a market for it, because there's a lot of cheap watch band manufacturers who are making. You remember we got some sent to us for review. That they kind of make these rugged cases that you can put your Apple Watch in. So there is a market for it.
I like Sunday Racer's comment about the new 3 Series grows on you like mold.
Some really strange design going on there.
Apple Sandbar with Apple TV.
Oh, so there's another rumor for us to think about. Apple Soundbar with Apple. Well,
we talked about the iPod Studio as a rumor a few weeks ago, didn't we? A new iPod Studio.
The old hi-fi thing.
Yeah, the iPod Hi-Fi.
I think it would make perfect sense for Apple to do a soundbar or a speaker system that goes with the TV, because they're already making speakers. Will we see that anytime soon? I'm going to give that an amber. I think that's amber. I can see it happening. Yeah. I don't see why Apple wouldn't do that. They're getting into TV.
Yeah, in a big way, actually.
Um,
Think about the huge MagSafe plug. I'm guessing that's for a car photo, Vincent. Just snapping it to the wall.
Right. I've got something to say about MagSafe. Now, you know that we did in the video, I said it's stronger than it used to be. And we did a little test in one of the podcasts as well. And you came to the same conclusion that if it's on a desk like this and the cable's sort of running off the edge of the desk and someone trips on it, it will put horizontal force on and just pull the mat straight off the desk.
Yeah.
So I was conversing with, or saw a comment from someone the other day where they have indeed had that and now have a dented MacBook because the MagSafe did not disconnect when someone tripped over the wire.
I am very, very sorry to hear that. That's gutting.
I also saw as well, someone tagged me on Twitter with a problem that they were having where their case of their MacBook Pro, the new one, is hitting the edge of the bottom case, so the lid of the laptop. So it's kind of he's got a load of scratches on the lid and on the case. And if you look at it carefully as you close it, it's an incredibly fine tolerance. But
So you only need to have given it the lightest of dings, and that
Yeah.
would be out of alignment.
or like the iMacs that were out of alignment from the factory on their stand, maybe some MacBooks are out of alignment. So definitely, if you've got one, just make sure it is straight and ship shape. Otherwise, get in touch with Apple.
Yeah,
Say
they'll
fix
sort it out.
please. Yeah.
What about an all-in-one Apple television itself? Amazon just released one. Sky have released
Yeah.
Sky Glass.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I could see Apple doing that, particularly as they're pushing so much of their own generated content, very high quality content. It has to be said. I don't know if you've noticed, Apple TV productions all have a very similar look in terms of color grading and cinematography and that kind of thing.
Interesting. I don't watch a lot of Apple TV.
I've watched some of the sci-fi recently, like Foundation and Invasion, and they've got a very similar aesthetic.
Interesting. Okay. Check that out. Sunday Racers, Apple Games console. Sort of have that in the Apple TV. I mean, Apple does seem to be focused on the casual gaming market more than anything else. They actually make more money from gaming than Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft put together. I think,
Scary, isn't it?
yeah, it's crazy. So the casual gaming market is obviously big business. Will they go all out for? I'm not convinced they would want to enter that market space, competing with PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X.
No, because although on the surface of it, you think, imagine an Apple console that will play AAA games that are Apple developed, and there's a huge risk to going into just one market like that. You see what's happened over the years to people like Sega, to a degree Nintendo, and that as other players like Xbox and PlayStation 5 have taken ascendancy. Apple, as you say, they're already making money from these little games. Actually, sometimes it's better to be doing the little more incidental stuff than the big purchase stuff. You actually make more money from it. So I think Apple will be very aware of that.
Yeah.
Equalizer makes a good point about Sky Glass. He uses an English term, fugly, which stands for flipping ugly. It isn't. It's very. Have you seen the Apple Sky Glass? It's very thick, isn't it?
And
But it's got.
I think that's because they put the speakers in it.
It's got the speakers in it, and revolutionarily, it doesn't have a separate control box. You actually plug into the TV.
Okay.
Unlike the new Samsungs that are razor thin, but you then got to find a place for this box somewhere.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I feel like we've probably been rambling on enough. Erin looks like she's losing the will to live over there.
I fell asleep within the first 5 minutes.
You don't fall asleep, Erin, because you're AI. You're not even really here.
I forget.
So
we would like to give a round of applause, though, for our little support team this evening, and thank you very much for you guys joining us this evening. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do, and all of the comments, the support, the interaction, we do really enjoy it. I just want to give a special shout out. You guys probably don't realise how much work goes on behind the scenes on getting videos ready. Tom does a lot of that work. He edits the podcast every week and does a lot of pre-editing. When you're looking at any of the recent videos on the channel, the B-roll, Tom and Erin sort that out. They do the filming for that as well. And Erin helps me out with some other stuff behind the scenes as well. So these guys are doing a great job.
Can I say something as well?
Yeah.
I'll say this to you guys. You prepare 95% of all the material for the podcast as well, all the talking points and thoughts, and then I just comment on them. So, you know, I'm the eye candy, but you are the engine that drives the content. So thank you to you.
Thanks. I do feel like that, Pete, because, like, you know, when we got a live set to do like today, and you know, I set it all up, and then you just turn up and talk.
I just waltz in.
It's like the old days. I used to be in a band. Used to play the drums, and any drummers out there will feel my pain, right? Because you not only have you got to dismantle your kit and all your ironmongery, load it into the car, take it to the gig, set it all up again, sweat for 2 hours behind the kit, and you get to that end, and all you want is a pint of beer from the bar over there, and the guitarists, they're all like in the case, snap off to get their pint, and you've got to dismantle the whole lot again, get it all into your car with the full knowledge that when you get home, you've got to set it all up again. It's the worst thing ever. And when, you know, those guitarists, they just turn up, they take all the credit. Honestly, you're like a guitarist, Pete.
I'm like Bono.
Prima donna.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Lots of thanks. Yeah, this is our last podcast of the year. There will be some videos going up on the main channel. I don't know yet when we're returning in the new year.
It'll be in January
at some point. Yeah. Because January is our year end for our business, so we do have quite a lot of stuff on in January.
But it will be in January.
It will be.
We'll do something, and we hopefully got some exciting stuff to do.
Hopefully,
so,
and possibly moving studio around and doing other stuff as well. So yeah, lots to come, and
singing,
and singing. Whatever you're doing for winter break and holidays, I hope you have a good time and get a good rest. I hope you stay safe. Hope this new Omicron variant doesn't wipe us all out. And we'll see you in the new year. Thanks for joining us, everybody, for the live Constant Geekery podcast.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.